Meeting of the 30th of July 2025. I'd like to welcome those who are in person today as well as online. Committee members may refer to technical devices during the meeting, and this meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be displayed on the Commission's website and YouTube. In the meeting today, I'd like to acknowledge that the meeting on the land of the Whadjuk people in our nation and pay our respects to elders past and present. Apologies in wake of absence today. We do have member night on the leave of absence, but all other members are in attending with Commissioners Adair and Member Moore online. Welcome to the meeting. So we'll move on then to disclosure of interests in relation to item 3.3, which is the City of Rockingham draft budget planning strategy for endorsement. Member Franklin has declared an interest in that to the principal panel. Franklin Planning and provides ongoing sub-consultancy services to Hampshire who are engaged by the city to prepare the plans for configuration. Member Franklin understands that we're very interested in thank you very much. In relation to item 4.1, the city sworn record planning scheme number 17, number 5, Commissioner Lackley has declared an indirect pecuniary interest. These matters, so I'll read it at the same time. That is also in relation to item 4.2, which is the City of Swans local planning scheme amendment number 215. In relation to both matters, Commissioner Lakey has declared an indirect pecuniary interest in he provides consultancy services to passing property by the land range within the local planning scheme area. And Commissioner Lakey has advised that he does not provide consultancy services of other projects, but rather mentors staff members. Commissioner Lakey, given what you have declared with indirect pecuniary, understand you would like to step out on those matters. Is there any other declaration of interest? Thank you very much. And members, are there any photos of representation on any items on today's agenda? Thank you very much. Our members can all please indicate that they have received and considered the appointment for today's meeting. Thank you very much for them. And just noting that item 1.1 the sponsors from the college to the question from the members, but writing member Franklin So moving on to item 1.6 on proclamation of minutes for Wednesday the 16th of July 2025. Members, are there any comments in relation to the minutes? Happy to adopt. Yes. Thank you, Member by Commissioner Perry. Thank you, Commissioner Lakey, and consent. Thank you, that's carried. So moving on now to deputations and presentations. And any
sorry to interrupt them. This is the notification report. We're having trouble with the audio. We might just try and reset that if we can. Test 1, 2, test 1, 2.
You all sound a very long way away.
Test 1, 2, test 1, 2.
Better. Thank you.
Thank you for letting us know. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's a lot better.
Great. All right. Amy, over to you for deputations. Thank you.
I welcome everyone that is present in order to make a deputation today, either in person or online via Zoom. You will be invited to join the table or be promoted on Zoom as a panelist to deliver your deputation. You will be advised of your allocated time, which will be managed by a timer which will appear on the screen. If you have a PowerPoint presentation, this will be displayed for you throughout your deputation, and you are requested to advise when you wish to advance the slides. We are beginning the deputations this morning on item 3.1, section 31, reconsideration of subdivision conditions for lot 31, East Road. And we welcome Ross Underwood to them.
Ross.
Good morning. Thank you for welcoming me. Thank you to the presiding member and committee members for receiving us. We act for the landowner, Mr. Justin Quinn Schofield, is the proponent for this subdivision land. My client has recognised a viable use to put this land to, and has engaged an experienced project manager to deliver the project. He intends to keep ownership of the roadhouse and receive income for leasing the roadhouse to a fuel service provider. Has expended considerable efforts towards the roadhouse, including obtaining development approval, negotiating and receiving a heads of lease from an experienced road fuel service provider. He has secured financing which requires that my client sells the balance land and uses the funds received from the sale of the balance land towards the construction of the roadhouse. And he has a prospective purchaser lined up to acquire the balance land. In other words, my client's ready to continue to progress and build the roadhouse, except that condition 1 of the subdivision approval effectively prevents the sale of the balance land until after the roadhouse has been partially constructed. And crucially, this delays receiving funds from the sale of the balance of the land. So the condition as it stands is, simply put, unworkable for our client to proceed to deliver the project. Members, the planning framework recognises that rural land can be subdivided for a roadhouse, and the officers in their report acknowledge this. We've set out the steps that our client has taken to the roadhouse. The case put by the officers is that our client might not proceed with the roadhouse. Now, I'll put it to the committee that if it's satisfied on the balance of the information provided that this roadhouse is proceeding, and our client has a genuine intent to proceed with the roadhouse, and condition 1 is not warranted and can be deleted, so that our client may proceed with the project. Now, the alternative put to us through mediation and included in the report is for a restrictive covenant that would limit the use of lot 1 for a roadhouse only. I can confirm that our client's agreeable to a restrictive covenant to the effect. It would overcome the limitations and allow us to proceed with the development. Page 7 of the report, the officers say that a restrictive covenant should expire at the time that the roadhouse has been constructed to plate height. And I have instruction from my client that the restrictive covenant around those terms is acceptable, and we would agree to it. So thank you for your time. We ask, firstly, that consideration is given to deleting the condition outright, or that a restrictive covenant that limits the use of the land to a roadhouse only is imposed to this committee. Other approach would allow our client to proceed with the roadhouse in the land. That's the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ross. Members, any questions for Ross on this item? Go ahead.
Ross, just to be clear, so you're happy with the restrictive covenant essentially as a fallback to deletion of the condition? Is that the time limited covenant in your deputation, or is it a sort of an unlimited restrictive covenant?
We've suggested that there be a time limit. That's simply because in the fullness of time, and I'm speaking potentially from now, roadhouse is no longer viable use on the website. That's the list of the land and the property of the buildings should revert to whatever may be permissible within the zoning under the local planning scheme. So we're satisfied with a restricted covenant in the interim, and seek that in the future there be some ability viable to look to. So if there was some unrestricted time to a restrictive covenant, we would ask that the committee clarify what circumstances in the future would allow the restrictive covenant to be removed.
Thank you. Commissioner Adair.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Ross. I note in the report that there's also a mention of perhaps not taking it to plate height, but perhaps putting it to substantial commencement. What's your position on that?
Thank you for the question, Member Adair. It doesn't really resolve the issue we have in that in order to commence construction to, say, a foundation level, there still needs to be a lot of work invested into obtaining the building permit and constructing the initial early works for the site, establishing services and the like. So there's still quite considerable cost involved in getting to that point. So it doesn't really resolve the issue that we have with condition 1 as it stands now.
Thank you.
Members, any further questions of Ross? Yes, go ahead, Member Franklin.
I was just wondering, has there been any investigation of how we, through an amendment, could actually resolve this issue of the ongoing connection of the development of the land? What that's been discussed?
Yeah, sure. It hasn't been discussed. In simple terms, the roadhouse is a permissible use within the general. So that there wasn't any need or responsibility raised or anything in order to allow the roadhouse to receive approval.
We'll tie it. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, anything further from Ross? Thank you very much for your deputation today.
Thank you. Very cool.
Our next deputation today is on item 3.2, development application for industry extractive for lots 3, 10, 53 and 615 Mandogalap Road for determination. We have Daniel Lewis and Stephen Elliott joining us at the table.
Chair, just be me presenting on the deputation on this one.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to present to the SPC this morning. My name is Daniel Lewis and I serve as an associate from Element Advisory, acting on behalf of Urban Resources, the applicant and the proposed operator of the extractive industry in Mandogalap. The committee is well aware, the site is located in the Mandogalap Improvement Scheme area, with a time limited development approval sought under clause 88.2 of the new improvement scheme to expand extraction works on site in preparation for the development of an industrial and service commercial precinct. This site has a long-held history of sand extraction, supplying this critical resource in a sustainable manner direct to market. This quarry, in its own right, has played a critical role in delivering housing within the South Metropolitan region, and this proposal seeks to further extend that supply. Our client specifically wants to make the point and thank the planning officers for their work in preparing the recommendation to the committee today, particularly for approval. I'd just like to make a few comments around the land use permissibility that's been noted within the response. Now, the application was lodged as an application for land use approval, being an industry extractive, and a works approval pursuant to clause 88.2 of the MIS. I wish to make this distinction as the recommendation by the SPC identifies works within the portion of land zoned service commercial as being an X use and therefore cannot be approved today. Refer to condition 4. I agree with the officer's assessment that the use in a zone cannot be approved where it is shown as an X use. Reference is also made here in regards to clause 30 of the MIS being a non-conforming land use right. And again, I support this assessment by the planning officers, given a land use approval was granted before the improvement scheme was put in place. However, an application for works only may be lodged as bulk earthworks in land which is zoned service commercial. In this instance, the portion of land within lot 10, which for the benefit of the community is on the eastern side, and the area to the south in lot 53 should be considered works only and not have a land use applied, being for bulk earthworks. All works associated here are in preparation of the site for future development in accordance with the zone. I also just wish to make the following comments on some of the conditions which were identified. Predominantly, the applicant supports the recommendation for approval, as I said before. There's just concern around condition 4, which refers to no extraction or battering is to occur within the service commercial zone. This reflects to our position in relation to works and works only. Condition 6B relates to noise modelling. I just wish to draw the committee's attention to the fact that this site is currently operating as an extractive industry and is compliant with the noise regulations, and therefore a simple advice note would be appropriate, or even a similar one in the recommendation. 6D is of particular concern. The term revegetation provisions is a concern for our client, particularly on the in this proposal being where this is benching the site for future development as industrial and service commercial land. Our client in the proposal had no recommendation for revegetation. However, the site will be left stable in an development. And then finally, condition 8, we believe this may have been a typo and a carryover, but there was, in the discussion with Western Power, our client is more than happy to construct an access track, a 30 metre limestone or blue metal access track around the base of the towers and also the access track. However, to put limestone across the entire batter on the southern edge was not proposed by our client, and our client is seeking for the term "and battering" to be removed out of that condition, because the batters would just stay as stable. And I'll just conclude again. I want to reiterate where we started, thank the officers for their recommendation to the committee, and seek the commission's support, or the committee's support for a number of modification to conditions.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Appreciate you working your way through those requested modifications. The department has had an opportunity to review those, and they have made some recommendations to the committee in relation to 6B. They support the request. 6D, just some minor wording changes around proposed landscaping. 8, they support your request. In relation to the first request on works on condition 4, they have raised that it is substantial works in terms, substantial development, shall I say, in terms of 184 tonnes or 115,000 cubic metres of extraction, with battering sides leaving a 6 to 8 metre depth below the adjacent land. So that is one that I think will have to be discussed at the committee, but just want to make the point that that is considered quite extensive. So,
if I may, Chair, so is the consideration the fact that the works are extensive and therefore a use applies?
yes.
That the okay.
So just to give you a bit of a appraisal of the response so far in terms of the department's response, but the committee will discuss that further. Members, any other questions in relation to this item? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you.
Franklin. Sorry, Member Franklin. And then I'll come to you.
Okay, through the chair. Obviously, there's an extension of the works being proposed. Just wanting to find the context of lot 500. There's obviously a residential dwelling is located on lot 500, and I was wondering what liaison had taken place with that landowner, and what sort of involvement or what provisions have been put in place.
This site has been a long-standing quarry, and there's a variety of landowners. We've been advised by our client that all the landowners are in discussions together, and they're all working together to benchmark the site to go for a future industrial estate. So they're part of it, not part of this specific application, but they are part of it. And like I referred to before, that particular house on lot 500, if you can imagine, lot 500 is here and our operations at the south, there's currently operations all the way around it, which is approved and operating at the moment. So
yeah, well, that's on lot 10.
So lot 10 is to the east.
Yes.
And 500 is below.
Yeah, I know where 500 is, but that's where the excavation is happening at the moment.
Correct.
Yeah.
The impacts from lot 10 are currently ongoing, but in consultation with, it's all part of the same group. Hopefully that is.
I take it the extension of the development now comes in quite close proximity now to the the dwelling, about 180 metres.
Yes, it is coming closer, but it's on site. It's just a logical progression of the quarry. It's not a surprise, put it that way.
No, okay. Thank you very much.
Deputy Chair.
Thank you. Through the chair, can I just ask, and again, so just for clarity, for the service commercial site, your proposition is that rather than a use, it is merely earthworking. Is that? And that you would accept, however, that there is substantive removal of material from that site, and that would not normally constitute a standard earthwork application.
through the chair, I accept the premise presented. However, I think in this site, it is unique in that you have to understanding the context of the overall site. The delineation on site where service, commercial and industrial happens is level. So the reality is that in order for the service commercial to be developed, we need to do bulk earthworks to the same level to pull the batter across, because you got can't remember the name of the road, but the road's on the east, it goes batters down and then it's in industrial service commercial. Because of the way the site is designed, these bulk earthworks are required, whether there's a service commercial development or whether it's any other development, the bulk earthworks are required. It's just a fact of the volume of material that it needs to be benched in the way it's designed. I hope that answers.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, members. Any further questions? Yes, go ahead, Lou.
To tease that out a little bit further, you're saying that there's no requirement for approval of use and we're simply dealing with the works. Is that something that can be dealt with as part of a separate engineering application outside of the application before us today?
It could. So we could lodge a DA for works for that portion within service commercial for the works in order to prepare it for future use. Yes. However, being combined in the same application.
Members, anything further? No? Okay, thank you very much for your deputation today.
Thank you.
Our next deputation is on item 3.3, and we have member Franklin leaving the room for this one. It's City of Rockingham Draft Local Planning Strategy 2025. We have Eleni Thorman, Wayne Burns and Dale Newson joining us.
Good morning, Chairperson and committee members, and thank you for this opportunity.
You're welcome.
Thank you. My name is Eleni Thorman and I'm a principal planner at CLE Town Planning and Design, and I'm joined by Wayne Burns, Placemaid Property, and Newson West Environmental. This deputation is made on behalf of a number of landowners within the area known as the Lark Hill Precinct in Port Kennedy, which is the area shown on the plan displayed, bound by Forty Road, Stake Hill Road, Mantra Road in Port Kennedy, immediately north of the residential estate Secret Harbour. We acknowledge the efforts of the city and the department in its substantial progression of the strategy and are generally supportive of the content. However, we object to the exclusion of the Lark Hill precinct as a planning area for further investigation. Our strong view is that this 60-hectare precinct, comprising 13 lots represented by 12 landowners, should be included as a planning area for further investigation. I would like to briefly outline the planning merit that supports this. As background, Lark Hill Precinct is identified as rural in the frameworks and is zoned rural under the MRS and the local planning scheme. The precinct is the only remaining rural zone land west of Mantra Road, not currently the subject of further investigation. Importantly, the city recommended the inclusion of the Lark Hill Precinct as a planning area for investigation following advertising of the strategy. That's quite a significant part. The Lark Hill Precinct should be included as a planning area for the following reasons, and this is very brief, so if you've got any questions afterwards, please feel free to ask. It represents a logical extension of urban zone land with Secret Harbour on its southern boundary. It has immediate access to road, transport and service infrastructure. It's in proximity to existing and future significant public transport infrastructure, as well as areas of open space and existing schools. It's limited agricultural land use due to lot sizes, location and unsuitable poor quality Quindalup soils. Its historic use and identification for equine purposes are no longer suitable. DBCA mapping indicates there are no priority flora or fauna species within the site. A conservation category wetland in the northwest corner of the site, and you can see it on that site plan, can be contained and managed as part of open space provision with appropriate buffers. Bushfire can be managed in accordance with the current guidelines. And essentially, this site represents an important land supply opportunity that can be delivered in the short to medium term if deemed appropriate, and represents a potential yield of around 750 dwellings. Whilst not currently identified in the framework, this precinct represents an excellent investigation opportunity, and the strategy represents a logical strategic document to capture this opportunity and guide this investigation. Accordingly, and consistent with the city's recommendation, we request that Larkhill Precinct be included in the strategy as a planning area for further investigation, with modifications made to figure 5 and 1 table 4. Thank you for your time and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Eleni. Members' questions on this item? Let's go ahead, Commissioner Herron.
Thank you. You've obviously got the existing racetrack. You mentioned about the equine no longer being an intended use in this particular area. What is the relationship then with the existing? Is that intended to close? Just is there some context you can provide in relation to?
There's no intention for the, or no intention that I understand in terms of the racetrack closing. It's essentially that the complementary uses that may once have been supported within these land holdings are not potentially desired by these landowners anymore. So there is some limited use, and I think you can probably
Yeah,
weigh
so
in on it.
there is a couple of properties within the precinct which do accommodate for equine uses. They're relatively small scale. Really, the intensification of uses in and around the precinct, traffic, etc., as well as the small lot sizes and the inability for properties to be able to undertake these activities at scale has been prohibitive to those being viable, and that use doesn't represent a strong future for those properties.
Through the chair, if I may, and I accept it's not highest and best use necessarily. Just, however, though, if I could also ask, has consideration been given in terms of potential land use conflict, which may be attached to that, particularly having had dealings before between equine and residential uses and flyers and the like? Have you looked in terms of what those issues might be and how you would manage that?
Yeah, look, that was something that would have to be sent to a detailed assessment on what those odour separation distances are, whether there's any facilities on the existing track that could be moved to increase that separation. I believe horses aren't held there on an ongoing basis. So I've done an assessment on a site around Magic Millions that was done previously where because it was intermittent use of the horses, then that sort of reduced the opportunity for conflict. So that's something that would be subject to detailed assessment, but I think it would be something that could be managed through separation distances. When you look at the scale and the size of this precinct, it's something that could be managed that way.
The request at this stage is for a planning area for investigation. So of course that would be something that we would look into in great detail. And if it was to eventuate the land uses and the designation of strategic land uses like the open space, which is actually in that northern portion where the wetland is, would be spatially considered from that perspective.
Okay, members. Eleni, can you just clarify the comment you made in relation to the City of Rockingham's view?
Yeah, so the City of Rockingham post advertising after receiving a few submissions in relation to this area actually recommended modification to include Larkhill Precinct as a planning area. I understand that the department officers didn't agree with that view because it was not within the framework, within the current frameworks. I don't think there is much more to the justification against it beyond that. And the reasons that the City of Rockingham outlined are generally consistent with those that I have outlined too. They generally looked at the current land use, the limitations in terms of agricultural land use. I think that was a pretty significant one. So it is certainly something that the city support. And I'm not sure if the city are deputising today, but they could be asked that question and yeah, certainly support it.
Thank you, Eleni. Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you for your deputation.
Our next deputation today is also on item 3.3, and we have Captain Singh and Tom Brera joining us at the table.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for having us. So this is just a verbal submission in support and recommendations made by the City of Rockingham for two potential areas, planning area Singleton and planning area in Larkhill. So we support basically both of the notes which were made by the City of Rockingham, the local planning strategy. Lark Hill, as Elaine, she has mentioned the changes in locality. And in Singleton, the area has gone from the last maybe 10 to 15 years from the massive changes. However, framework, the state planning framework does not identify these both areas as planning areas for urban investigations, but local planning strategies more current and showing the current footprint of the area. So, and since the framework published, MRS 1417 has been progressed for the Carnup train station. Lands south of the Singleton, Medora Bay and Lakelands, they are due for completion by end of 2026. Secret Harbor, which is south of Lark Hill Precinct, has not got any land future urban to develop. So the land stock will be very dry in the coming end of 2026 for future. So so we sort of like ask the department if they could look these lands in strategy. So that is all.
Okay.
Mission. So if any questions, but like again, we are not professionals. We're just everyday working people. So
That's fine. Thank you. Appreciate you being here, Captain Singh and Mr. Pereira. And we have also got the benefit of your written submission here as well. So that's also very helpful. I will see if there are any questions for you from members.
Sure.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much for your submission. Just wanting to clarify, because you both sort of state in the submission that you are representing other landowners. I just want to clarify, because you mentioned obviously a number of streets, is that universal in terms of do all the landowners hold this position, or I'm just wanting to understand the extent of that alignment?
That is, thank you. That is a good question. And yes, we are presenting the landowners from south and north of Singleton Beach Road. And also I own land personally in Lark Hill Precinct as well, over 25% land in that. So, and similarly, I own lands personally in Singleton also. Yes, so this submission and also the previous submissions have been done in collaborations. So yeah, so all the landowners basically have been consulted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any further questions? Thank you for your deputation today.
Thank you
for joining us.
Next deputation is also on item 3.3, and Brett Ashby is joining us via Zoom. We'll just promote you to panelist, Brett, up to that. If you can hear us, Brett, could you just join?
How's that going?
Thank you, Brett. Thank you.
All right, should I jump into it?
Thank you. Go ahead.
Cool. Thank you for the opportunity to make a deputation, and apologies for not being there in person. Unfortunately, the flu's hit our household and I wasn't immune to it. I just want to start off by thanking the DPLH for the ongoing liaison and support they gave us in going through this process. It's a huge body of work for us as our first local planning strategy, and they've been very helpful. In terms of the recommendations, I don't have any major concerns with them. I'm satisfied that the staff have carefully considered the various different matters and provided reasonable justification for their positions. There's really one point I did want to raise, and it follows on the back of the two deputations you've received, and that's in regard to the various submissions seeking urban or quasi-urban type development that's inconsistent with the planning frameworks and MRS at the moment. And I completely understand the position that the DPLH has recommended in terms of not wanting a local planning strategy that's inconsistent with the frameworks. I guess my concern is with the lack of guidance in terms of where to from here for any of sites that seem to show some merit for possibly investigation for urban uses and when and how that occurs. I've done my best to look through the PMP 3.5 and it's really not clear to me in terms of the exact timing for reviews and how that will transpire. So my concern is that what this will lead to is a range of ad hoc proposals that come through seeking MRS amendments via the Commission and Council, and I'd much rather see that as a strategic process through review of Perth and Peel 3.5 and the frameworks. So I guess I'm just encouraging the Commission to give some consideration to having a clear pathway forward for these sorts of scenarios. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett, and I very much take on board the comments that you make today. We'll have a discussion about that when we come to the items. I do appreciate that. I will now hand over to members to see if there are any questions of you. Members? Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Lanke.
Just to follow on that, Brett, just for clarity then, in terms of the deputation regarding Lark Hill being included in this area, are you're supportive of that? The city is supportive of that?
Oh, we're supportive of it as far as investigation is concerned. I might talk it just briefly if you don't mind, because I know there were questions raised. Lark Hill, when it was first developed, was intended to be a replacement for the Belmont Racecourse. And so it was intended to have a much higher function than what it does now, which is essentially a training facility. So I think with that shift, it has brought into question the original thinking for that Lark Hill precinct, which was an equine precinct in support of it. There are obviously some basic reasons why you think, well, maybe it does have merit for urban development. Would need to be satisfied that it's a sustainable urban development, can be properly serviced with public transport and the like. So I wouldn't say I'm 100% sold on it, but certainly I think there's enough there to warrant it and being investigated at some point.
Thank you.
Members, anything further for Brett? Thank you very much, Brett. Really appreciate your deputation today.
No worries. Thank you.
Our next deputation today is on item 4.1. We have Commissioner Lakey will be leaving the room for this one. It is on the City of Swan Local Planning Scheme number 7, amendment number 195, recommendation to the Minister. And we have Paul Gazzone, Jacob O'Reilly and Justin Page joining us on Zoom.
Good morning. Can you see me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you. You happy for me to start?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. So good morning, WAPC Chair and SPC members. Really appreciate the opportunity to make a deputation on item 4.1, City of Swan Local Planning Scheme 17, Amendment 195. So my name's Paul Gazzone. I'm the Senior Development Manager from Development WA, and I'm joined online by my colleague Jacob O'Reilly and our planning consultant Justin Page from Element in the event of any questions from the committee. Development WA is the landowner of Lot 912 Midland Road, Bushmead, which is the subject of the proposed Amendment 195 to the City of Swan Local Planning Scheme. Development WA thanks the DPLH officers for their time in discussing this proposal and appreciates the officer's suggested modifications that may be considered to the initial scheme amendment that was proposed by the City of Swan. Given Lot 912 currently has no zoning under the local planning scheme, allocation of an appropriate zoning is considered absolutely necessary to provide the planning certainty that is required over this landholding. Should a modification to an urban development zone be recommended, Development WA would be supportive of this. This zoning would enable us to commence preparation of a local structure plan, which can consider the appropriate land uses, environmental considerations, traffic, residential densities, and the request for a primary school from the Department of Education that came through during the MRS amendment phase. Development WA has undertaken a level of community and stakeholder engagement in the past, which has informed our initial concept planning that we have completed today. Should this amendment be recommended to the Minister, we will continue to engage with the community and key stakeholders going forward in subsequent phases of planning. In closing, should the rezoning of Lot 912 to urban development be recommended, we consider this a necessary step to bring the land into conformance with the MRS urban zoning of the site, and would remove the current planning uncertainty that does exist over this land holding. This rezoning will allow the future local structure planning, during which more detailed design and planning will occur in further consultation with the City of Swan, Department of Planning and other key stakeholders, and importantly, the local community. We thank you for your time and we would welcome any questions from the committee.
Paul, thank you. Emma Cole, Chair. Thank you for your deputation today. I will now see if members have any questions for you. Yes, go ahead, Deputy Chair, and then Commissioner Adair.
Thank you. Just wish to ask, there was obviously the concepts which were included as part of the amendment, and there were obviously some changes proposed as part of that. And although obviously the consideration today is not about the detail contained therein, I did want to understand the drivers behind the modification, and particularly, I suppose, the elements attached to the open space provision. Could you just speak to that for a moment?
That might be something, Justin, I might get you to talk to in terms of the open space provisions, but just in terms of the detailed concept planning that's been undertaken to date, obviously this site is, it has some very key environmental values that need to be respected for future planning. So it was very important that we did a level of concept planning to, I guess, inform the future planning that was required and be, I guess, comfortable with the TPS amendment. Also part of that, obviously part of the TPS amendment process, it was referred to the EPA for their assessment. So we did a lot of work with the EPA to give them confidence that we were going to be sensitive to those key environmental factors. And that informed a lot of our open space provision, with a key element to that with tree retention on the site. But I might get Justin to add if you got anything else to add to that.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thank you, members. Yeah, just to add to what Paul said, there are key open space areas within the site. There's a threatened ecological community in the northern portion, and also there's a foreshore requirement for the Cardinia Brook. And so these open space areas, the DWER was interested in understanding how these spaces were going to. And so a very high level sort of concept plan was developed showing these areas and sort of working with DWER and the EPA in providing adequate scheme text provisions which they would be comfortable with in seeing in as part of this amendment to allow for open space and environmental assets and conservation considerations to be addressed at the structure planning stage. So on that basis, there was a lot of tic-tacking with the wording for the scheme provisions, which we finally landed on and agreed wording, which EPA was then comfortable to not undertake a formal assessment. And actually the concept plan, surprisingly, we discovered was advertised as part of the city's package that they sent out, and preferably our preference would have been not to incorporate that concept plan because it was quite a high level plan at the time. And but anyway, it went out, and actually we received a lot of feedback from the community and other stakeholders, which actually will be useful in informing the preparation of the structure plan. So it wasn't all bad.
Forewarned.
Yeah. If I may, and in relation to that, there's obviously a school site which is part of the concept and therefore part of the intent. Is it reasonable to assume that the Education Department have been involved in that process?
Yeah, that's correct. Paul, did you want to talk to that?
Yeah, just we've had preliminary, well, a lot of meetings with education throughout our planning, our concept planning work, and we've recently have had meetings with them just to confirm, I guess, the need for this primary school site. Obviously, I won't speak on behalf of education, but they have reiterated the absolute need for provision of a primary school site to serve this local catchment. So we've worked hard to identify a location on our site that could accommodate a primary school site. Obviously, this site does have a lot of environmental values and different constraints, so we had to consider that up front, given the land take that was required for a school to appropriately locate it within our concept planning. That's not to say that, you know, it's definitely going to be as per our concept plan, because as you suggested, we've got the local structure planning process to go through and all those discussions, but we just needed a level of comfort that we could accommodate it in our plan.
Thank you. Commissioner Adair, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Paul, Justin, I don't know who's going to address this. Given the prior ownership, and I don't know the extent of use of the site, has the matter of unexploded ordnances been considered?
Yeah, my understanding is that we don't have any unexploded on site. So this was like a mechanical operations for their equipment and training of different vehicles and the like. So this was this particular land holding didn't have the rifle range upon it. So that was in the broader locality.
Okay. All right, I might ask the officers a few questions on that, because it's not just the rifle range. Sometimes there's other things yeah, on these sites. But yeah, just as precautionary, just asking. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, are there any further questions? Thank you very much for your deputation today. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Just wait for Commissioner Lake to return. And thank you all. So that concludes our verbal deputations for today. We have not received any written deputations. So members, we will then move on to consideration of items before us. On confidential items, we're starting with item 3.1, which is the Section 31 reconsideration of subdivision conditions for lot 31 Neves Road in Bullsbrook. And we're joined today by Jessica Burbick and Dan McCluggage. If you'd like to come to the table, thank you very much. Jessica and Dan, you've heard the deputation today by Planning Commission's Ross Underwood. Is there any comments that you wish to make in response to the deputation and the request for the restrictive covenant?
Yes, thank you. So through the chair, is that subdivision of rural land should only be supported in unique circumstances.
In this particular phase, subdivision was supported as the new lot is proposed to be developed for a roadhouse. And that's consistent with DC policies 1.10 and 3.4. Without the roadhouse, the subdivision wouldn't be supported. So a condition to ensure the roadhouse is developed on the newly created lot is essential. Without the condition tying the development to the subdivision, there's no certainty that the development approval will ever be acted upon. So we've explored a number of options with the applicant through the confidential SAT mediation process, in addition to those presented in the officer's report. Ultimately, it was determined that the requirement to construct the development to plot height was the appropriate mechanism to tie the development to the subdivision. We do think that a condition to require substantial commencement would achieve an acceptable result, but this is not supported by the applicant, as we've heard this morning, so it's likely that that won't resolve the SAT process. A restrictive covenant, including a time-limited covenant, such as the expiry at plate height construction as proposed by the applicant, doesn't give the same certainty, and it presents some complexities in terms of implementation and enforcement. So for those reasons, officers have put forward the recommendation to reaffirm the original decision and retain condition 1. Happy to.
Yeah, Jessica, just on that, could you just elaborate a little more on the complexity and uncertainty if we were to look at a restrictive covenant? If you could just elaborate a bit more on that.
Chair. So a restrictive covenant it's not a planning instrument, and so in terms of, I guess, certainty to the future, there is possibilities where the current or future owner could still pursue a development application for a different land use on the site, and the existence of a restrictive covenant on the title wouldn't be a legitimate reason to refuse that application. And so there are also exempt land uses under the scheme, which could be pursued through a building permit, which would then leave the WAPC in a position where the only way to enforce the restrictive covenant would be through legal avenues. That's sort of, the scenario there.
Thank you, that's helpful. Members, opening it up for questions now. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, and appreciate the position that staff are in, and we will obviously deal with that matter, but it was actually, I think you touched on the one that I was particularly mindful of. If the subdivision were to go ahead and the restrictive covenant were to be applied, there would be an application for a dwelling. Would that be able to be restricted through the restrictive covenant?
So my understanding would be that a dwelling under the scheme is a P use, and so there'd be a scenario there where the restrictive covenant seemed to be in the scheme, and I believe there is in the planning regulations there is a regulation which basically says that if there's a restrictive covenant that conflicts with the scheme in terms of the number of dwellings that can be constructed on the site, then that is extinguished.
The scheme prevails.
Thank you.
Commissioner Adair.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions on this one because it's a bit perplexing. From what I just heard you say, it sounded like you were intimating that through the process of a building permit, they could get a different land use on the site, which is not necessarily the case. I have a question about if a restrictive covenant were put on with a, or even to plate height, what you're proposing, after that's achieved, there's nothing restricting them from a change of use, like 6 years down the track, or adding additional uses to the site. So I don't know that we're actually achieving what we want to achieve. When we've got another matter on the agenda today, which is confidential, but it's to do with scheme amendments to do with roadhouses. So I would have thought that a restrictive covenant is something that could actually, if it was in there for the life of the site, and it can be removed under certain circumstances, if it's appropriate. So I would have thought a restrictive covenant was far more appropriate than having something to plate height.
Through the chair. So I guess it would achieve the same outcome if the development was to go ahead. So you're right. So you could apply a restrictive covenant. I guess that we're just saying that the complexities and the mechanism of a covenant, when we have a mechanism through a plate height condition, that's much clearer. In fact, you're correct. Like it would be fulfilled at the completion of the construction at 2 plate height. I guess the life of the development would be expected to be quite lengthy, you know, for this nature of this use. And I guess we're just aligning with the WPC position that subdivision is supported for the purposes of this use. So how's the best way to implement this development to ensure that this is achieved through this subdivision outcome is what we're looking at.
Just a question from me. We do have a potential alternative motion, which is to look at the completion to substantial commencement rather than plate height. Now, you have raised in the applicant raised that they don't favour that option, but of course would be lesser requirement than the plate height, achieving plate height. Do you have any comment on that?
Yep, so the report touches on the substantial commencement option. So it is an option that's been considered for other subdivisions, and it would be an acceptable outcome. I guess it achieves the same. There's some issues around what is defined as substantial commencement. There's some a little bit of intricacy in there, but I think to the point where the applicant's gone and achieved a building permit, undertaking development on the site, there's probably enough certainty there that the development is going to go ahead. But I guess it works too if the applicant has stated it presents financial challenges for the owner and they're not willing to go down that option, sort of leaves us in the same position as what we are now.
Okay. Members, any further questions? Go ahead,
So, intent of the roadhouses. The applicant has said that because of the subdivision and because they need the funds to fund the other, it's more a technicality than anything. Is there confidence? Is it because DPLH is it a process side of things rather than a confidence that the applicant won't deliver the roadhouse? And have you seen? I mean, I think the proponent reputation said that they'd actually signed agreements with an operator. Have you cited them or are you confident in them?
Through the chair, I think it's a question of certainty through the planning framework. So, you know, the applicant's gone ahead and provided information around the financial requirements for them to pursue this development. They've entered into agreement with service station provider. That's accepted, but I guess the challenges that we face is if that was to fall through, what are we then left with? Is it a subdivision of rural land that can then be developed for purposes other than a roadhouse?
Okay, any further questions before we move to consideration of the item? Okay, we do have 2 alternatives at the moment. I mean, we've got many alternatives, but the ones that we have in writing before us are that we have the recommendation from the department, which is included in the report. We have an alternate motion which has been prepared but not necessarily committed to, which is to require that the roadhouse reach substantial commencement rather than reach plate height. And then we have the discussion on the restrictive covenant, which isn't favoured by the department. So I will open the floor to see whether members wish to move the recommended or an alternate. Member Harmon.
Thank you, Chair. I guess from a discussion point of view, the other one that is before us is to simply have the condition deleted.
Yes,
by the applicant.
Yes.
And when I consider the merits and the balance of risk on this one, that's probably where I'm currently at. I think this is almost a point in time issue, right? If the roadhouse was developed, there'd be no question about the subdivision. The officers rightly are trying to do is link the certainty of the development to the subdivision. And I think the applicant has demonstrated a genuine intent. I mean, the original DA was subject to a lengthy SAT appeal. This subdivision is now subject to a lengthy SAT appeal. So significant time and cost and effort has gone into getting to this point. They've got a tenant who signed up with tenure that's 35 years plus, possibly. So I'm comfortable that the applicant will deliver the roadhouse in accordance with what has been put to us. I think whether we construct to plate height or to substantial completion, I don't think achieves the intent. I don't think it helps the applicant. Because if even going to substantial completion, the applicant would then have to, or the proponent would then have to get a building permit, start construction, pause, go and get subdivision clearance at that point, titles, and it's an unnecessary delay. I think the restrictive covenant as an alternative, when I weigh it up, it probably doesn't achieve it. I don't want to sterilize the land in perpetuity by a permanent restrictive covenant because the tenure will end at some point. And therefore, I think a 5-year alternative is probably not achieving the same intent. So I think on balance, I'd be comfortable to move a motion to have the condition simply deleted on the basis that I'm satisfied the applicant has demonstrated the intent to deliver the roadhouse in accordance with the DA and the subdivision before us.
Can I respond before we have a motion before us? Take all of that on board. I think that what we have before us, though, is a willingness from the applicant to consider a covenant, and that could be considered to remain in place till plate height. The officers don't favour this approach, but I think that provides more cover than the deletion of condition outright.
So I completely hear you and I'm with you, but I haven't listened to where we are now. The strict covenant sort of goes some way to satisfy some of the concerns, which I completely understand and respect.
Not the preferred, but in terms of the scale of the discussion, I think that's probably preferred over deletion outright. Officers, do we have a form of words for just to pause and entertain the wording if we've got a form of words that we could see on the screen, because we haven't actually seen this potential in writing. Need to zoom in a bit.
Sorry, to Chair, I agree with Carmen in terms of it is a point in time moment. A lot of work here. It's not a normal scenario. It warrants something.
Is it possible to see that a little bit with font? Here we go. I think the issue, though, is that it would need to be time limited, and I think from my perspective to plate height would be an appropriate timing, given that that's the alternate condition that's recommended by officers. So we probably just need to add some words there.
There in the second paragraph.
Oh, is it? Sorry, apologies.
Second paragraph.
Plate height.
Thank you. Apologies. I was only focusing on the first. Thank you very much. Yep. Okay. And Member Moore, you have a question?
I'm just not sure how this restrictive covenant to plate height is going to be any different to the condition requiring that, and it makes me nervous. I mean, I sort of agree with the officers. My concern is that we're putting ourselves, or putting the WAPC in a position where really it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be the one having to monitor a restrictive covenant. It's not a good precedent, I don't think. So I just wanted to make those comments, and I can't see how this makes any difference in terms of condition 1's to plate height as well.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we probably need to have the debate because there's different views in the room.
I just wanted to make sure that my view was expressed there.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So again, we do have various options. We've heard the deletion of the condition altogether. We've got a modification to include the restrictive covenant. We still have the option to consider to substantial commencement and the officer's recommended option to plate height. So I think we've probably never had as many options. But I will now open the floor to we do now need to move a motion.
Okay, through the chair, if I may, I would like to, I think if we move the officer recommendation, we can then deal with an amendment, or would you like me to?
It's going to be, I think. Harder.
Oh, harder, okay. I would, perhaps I would like to move then the recommendation with the modification as per the screen with the restrictive covenant. I'm happy to talk to that at the appropriate point in
Okay,
time.
is there a seconder for this? Yep, seconded by Commissioner Brooks. Please speak to it.
Certainly. I think that, and I fully appreciate the position that the officers are in, and I do think it's open to the commission to apply the modification. But just, I think, for clarification, both for the other members here and for those who may be listening, it is not about the fact that someone might have inappropriate intent. But having had particular circumstances where the intentions don't actually fall through, you do end up with a situation which can become untenable. And I have, I suppose, a level of comfort about the fact that there is an agreement with an operator. I think that the genuine intent is there. I do see that the restrictive covenant provides a level of bridge between what would be, I think, to open an option through to something which is going to be workable and aligned with the, I suppose the proponent is agreeable to this. I would, however, be saying that I don't believe that this should be a standard practice, and that's why I think it's appropriate that the officers have presented what they've presented, and then it is for the commission to understand the risk. If we accept the risk, then accept this position.
Okay, very Commissioner Brooks, do you wish to speak to it?
Just to reiterate, yeah, I do think it was completely appropriate for the recommendation they made. I think it is something that needs to be considered and discussed at this forum. I think I can be really comfortable that the proponent has presented a case where they are committed, they've done everything that they can do to get as far as they can, and this condition will give them the opportunity to raise the funds that they need to take the next step. And I think that supporting them in that is appropriate at this time.
Thank you. Members, any other comments? Yes, Commissioner Adair.
Thanks, Chair. I'm actually going to speak against this motion because I don't believe that, given what the officers have said to us about restrictive covenants not actually achieving what we want them to do, and I know that they raised it as an option and the proponent is happy with the idea, but if it's not actually restricting a different DA or anything else, then I don't know that it achieves what we want it to achieve. At the moment, I'm leaning towards Member Harmon's position, but I'll listen to the rest of the debate. Thank you.
Commissioner Adair, members, other comments? Member Moore, did you wish to make your comment? Yes, please go ahead.
Sorry. Yes, I don't agree with this at all. I think that it's a slippery path to go down. I also don't think that the condition should be deleted, and I think it's an example where a subdivision of rural land should only be undertaken in exceptional circumstances, and by rights it could. There are many other ways of going ahead with a project like this, and I don't have anything before me that would think that this particular applicant is any different to any other applicant. There's certainly no certainty, as we all know, in development. No matter what their intent is, it is incredibly risky to think that something might not happen. And I agree with Member Heron when he says that it's not necessarily the applicant's intent, it's what actually can happen in development, and we're all experienced in that. So I wouldn't be supporting either the deletion of the condition or the restrictive covenant.
Thank you very much, Member Moore. Members, other comments on the item? Yes, Member Franklin.
To the motion, whilst I acknowledge that the use of restricted covenant is not the ideal approach, them. I do acknowledge that in this particular instance, it is a mediated outcome position on behalf of the Commission, that going back as the position. And in that context, I believe that this amendment should be supported.
Thank you. Any further comments? Look, I'll just comment that I was probably sitting somewhere between substantial commencement and restrictive covenant. I take on board all of the comments from members. I think that this is everyone's views are clear and warranted circumstance. I've certainly preferred the restrictive covenant over removal of the condition. I think that provides, as I think someone described it as a bridge. Was that you, Deputy Chair? I think that was a good description. As Member Franklin has pointed out, it is a mediated outcome. This is the option that I think allows the applicant to receive the finance to build the development. They've made the point that substantial commencement doesn't actually aid them any more than achieving plate height. So on the basis of a sort of pragmatic outcome and on the basis that this has been discussed and will not be will be treated on the basis of its own merits and not something that be seen as a position of the Commission as a universal movement to use restrictive covenants in this way. I think this is probably helpful in achieving a consensus between what are quite disparate views around the table. So for that reason, I support the motion. Is there any further discussion? Any dissent? Any dissent? Yes, thank you, Member Moore and Member Adair dissenting. The motion is carried. Thank you. All right, so we'll move now to item 3.2. Thank you very much, Jessica and Dan. We'll move to item 3.2, which is the development application for industry extractive for lots 310, 53 and 615 Mandogalup Road in Mandogalup. And we're joined by Damien Martin and Lisa Powell, and I think Scott might be joining online. Stay there if you wish. Does that mean you're not on camera?
Yeah,
sorry.
Hitting the camera, the live stream.
We thought we were being clever.
The spotlight, you'll need to come around to the other side of the table. Thank you.
It's joined but hasn't.
Thank you very much for joining us, Damien and Lisa. We've heard the deputation today from Element. I believe it was Damien from Element. And we've got the requested modifications in table form, which has been provided now to all members, hard copy with your comments. I think that probably the main point of discussion is around their request on condition 4, which is to determine that the works there, that is works in relation to that particular service commercial zoned land where it would be an ex-use if the land use was applied, and you provided comments, but for the public record it might be useful to elaborate just in terms of why you don't support that modification.
Yes, thank you through you, Chair. Acknowledging that the planning framework has changed not long after this application was lodged, and that's added some complexity to the assessment and the way in which this is being defined. We acknowledge SPP 2.4 and the need for extraction of these raw materials before they do transition to their ultimate use. I think what we have found challenging at a staff level is that the application was made for sand mining. That use has been occurring on the site several decades, and all previous approvals have classified the use in a similar manner. The closest definition that we have available to us under the current scheme now is for extractive industry. And so to treat the use on a particular portion of lot 53 that's zoned to service commercial would be a challenge for the staff, I think, when the activities occurring across the entire site are identical. So not unsympathetic to the position that we find ourselves in here, but we have considered the request that has come through for bulk earthworks or works of that vein. But I think we come back to the matter that it would be an extractive industry use. It is more closely defined to the use and is not so much about the works. The extent of the works is significant. The levels would actually be beneath the levels of the future Hammond Road design. So I actually don't feel like it is equivalent to benching or in order to prepare the land for its future land use. It is an extraction of a significant amount of resource.
Thank you, Lisa. And just the other point that you make here is around the way forward if the applicant did wish to pursue this further.
Yes, I think the cleanest way through the particular matter is to consider an amendment to the Mandoglup Improvement Scheme.
And just from a time frame perspective for the applicant, could you speak to that if they did take that course?
Yes, we could consider that probably later this year. I think it would probably be something that we'd need to work through over a course of months. I'm not entirely sure at the moment as to how that could be treated in standard, complex, etc. We'd need to go away and have a closer look at that, but I would imagine that we could consider one by the end of the year or early next.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Opening up to questions from members. Go ahead, Ray.
Thank you, through the chair. One of the, and again, I fully understand the position that's being taken in terms of it would be nice to classify as a particular way, but there's a level of rationality that it would need to be done. In terms of the blue road that's being proposed, and I'm mindful of the interface between the service commercial and this, and therefore that there would need to be some level of correlation between levels. Does either the application as it currently stands deal with that, or is there going to be a future application, if you like, for that road that is then going to have to deal with the levels and interface?
So Hammond Road, this site is not currently constructed. The scheme sets that aside. We've done a base design to inform the levels through there. But there'll actually be no direct access to this portion of lot 53. Access will actually need to be through two identified access routes to the north through lot 10. So there'll be western legs coming off roundabouts or T-junctions. So this site will actually not be viable for a future service commercial use until Hammond Road is actually constructed, or there are other roads coming through the general and light industrial areas to provide access to the site. So the levels are somewhat lower than we might have anticipated. There's the Hammond Road level, then there's a 20-metre wide tramway reserve as well, and then it drops down into lot 10 and 53. There is some battering or some level difference that can probably be accommodated. It might be a little more than we might have anticipated, but we'd need to work through that in a future application.
Through the chair, if I may, would the process in terms of amendments to the scheme enable that to be dealt with concurrently? Do you think that by the time we would be dealing with a potential amendment to the Mandoglup scheme, that there might be additional detail in terms of the Hammond Road levels and alignment? Or is that too?
Yeah, I couldn't confirm that we could deal with that concurrently. I think we'd need to look at it more closely. I'd have to have a bit more information available. Sorry.
Yeah.
Commissioner Adair?
Can I just clarify what the actual application was for? Did you say it was for extractive?
Sand mining.
Yeah, sand mining. So it was never for bulk earthworks.
Yeah. Right. Anything further, Commissioner Adair?
I just wanted to be quite clear that the recommendation that you've got there is, I know there's been a lot of questions about this, but sorry, just flicking between plans and reports, etc. It's just want to be absolutely positive that the ex-use land use permissibility on lots 10 and 53. So this is not permitting this within those lots, is it?
Through the chair, we are suggesting it should be approved on lot 10 by virtue of non-conforming use rights. There are previous approvals for extractive industry on lot 10. And so the scheme provides for that to continue despite the new scheme making that non-permitted. The problem that we have here is there's been no previous approval for lot 53. So lot 53 is not available for non-conforming use rights. So condition 4 of the recommendation in front of you is only prohibiting or suggesting there should be no activity on the service commercial zoned portion of lot 53, but lot 10 is to continue its operations.
Yeah, that's as I understood it. I think for the record, that's much clearer. Thank you.
Commissioner Adair, Member Franklin.
Yes, I'd like to talk to a question that I circulated prior to the meeting. It's in relation to the existing development approval on lot 10 and how this approval condition set actually ongoing management of that lot.
Through the chair, if I may. So I think you have questions regarding conditions 5, 6, 7 and 11. So if I can just speak to those in order, but condition 5, trying to manage the interface with the book forever, and lots 10 and the approved section, eastern portion section of lot 615 don't abut bush forever. So we haven't referenced lot 10 or the western eastern part of 615 for that reason. So I actually feel that condition 5 is appropriate as is. Condition 6 and 7, the keywords in there is prior to commencement. So lots 10 and the eastern part of 615 aren't referenced because they're already active. So what we want to see are the plans for the new areas. So prior to commencing on the new expanded areas, we need to see those plans. But to be clear, those plans should actually encompass all of the lots, including 10 and the eastern part of 615. We would suggest maybe an advice note could be clear about that. I actually feel that the wording of those conditions is appropriate. Condition 11 is very similar. We would suggest it doesn't warrant change. It actually just applies to all of the lots that are part of the subject application. But that advice note we've just mentioned for condition 6 and 7 could also just be clear that condition 11 also includes all the lots part of the subject application.
I think that would be advisable because just trying to administer 2 approvals over a development that actually goes over, there's no break. It's really the whole, it's a consolidated approval now going forward. So I think it needs to be clear what the expectations are for remediation and other site management issues. So is there a draft advice note to that effect?
Have a draft.
Okay.
Oh, great. Would you like to read it out?
Yes.
I mean, we're not moving it at the moment.
No, but yes, in relation to conditions 6, 7 and 11, the plans, drawings or reports referenced shall encompass all subject lots.
Satisfied with that? Okay, we can deal with that when we're dealing with the.
And that's been sent through.
To commission support, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, ma'am? Okay, so we have a number of modifications that we can consider. They are in the table before us. The ones that are supported or supported in part by the department go to 6B, 6D and 8 and a further advice note, Lisa, that is read out. So I'm just thinking of a way to move with those. Would you like to move with those modifications?
Move with the modifications.
So that would be moved with the modifications to 6B so that the condition is removed and a standard advice note is included which states the landowner applicant is advised that all extractive operations are to comply with the environmental protection noise regs. 6D is amended to have the wording any proposed landscaping inserted. And condition 8 has the removal of the wording and battering and the inclusion of the advice note that Lisa has just read out to us. So that would form the motion. Is there any questions on that, members? It's contained in the document in print before you, so hopefully that's clear. Any questions before we move with that? Okay, that has been moved by Commissioner Herron. Is there a seconder for that? Member Harmon is seconding. Is there any discussion?
I would just wish to speak to it in relation to, I understand the request in relation to condition 4. And although it would be convenient to be able to apply that consideration, I just consider it to be a stretch too far. And I think that the potential ramifications of that are significant. I think, as the officers have indicated, it would be, we have the limitations that we have limitations on, that is, there's an X use, and the notion that we would be able to do that would just be stretched too far. I do think we've been able to then work through the remainder of the issues in a pragmatic way, and I do think if the amendment that you refer to may, if I could ask that we give consideration for how we then deal with the Hammond Road extension, because although I accept that it won't have direct access, the interface of that broader precinct and the road interface is, I think, going to be a substantive issue going forward.
Thank you. Member Harmon, any comments?
No, nothing further.
Members, anything to add? Probably just from me to reiterate the comments of the Deputy Chair in relation to condition 4 request. I think that as Commissioner Adair highlighted, this isn't a request for bulk earthworks. It is actually sand mine. That's significant consideration for the committee and why we can't cross that bridge that has been requested of us. So I do support that. Any further discussion? Any dissent? Thank you. That is carried. Item 3.3, City of Rockingham draft local planning strategy for enforcement, and we are joined by Rowan Miller, Matt Pitt and Xiao Chong. Thank you very much. Thank you, Damien and Lisa. Thank you.
Cool.
Going okay? On with welcome. Thank you very much. I think basically today's discussion is really focused on some potential investigation areas. So we've heard today from landowner consultant in relation to Lake Hill precinct. We heard from landowners in relation to the same precinct in Stingleton Dunes, and we heard from Brett Ashby from the City of Rockingham, who says he understands and supports investigation, but also understands that this shouldn't be in conflict with the state's planning frameworks, but is really keen to understand how then those areas can be investigated, because he does believe there is merit. So in terms of that summary, be interested in your comments.
So I think the information presented by both parties have merits. I mean, both these sites are contiguous with established areas, and they have good road access. Servicing is available to the adjoining established areas. Bushfire threat might be a consideration that needs to be given also thought. So the position in the report is really maintaining the primacy of the planning framework. And also the modifications that have been recommended by the city in response to these submissions, there are probably things that can occur outside of the planning strategy, but there's nothing to prevent the landowners from putting together a case and engaging with the city, engaging with the commission in respect of potentially or change classification in the planning frameworks.
Okay. Members opening to questions. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, and again, in relation to those two sites specifically, and understanding the position that has been taken, would it be fair to say, however, that at the metropolitan level, the scale of these particular sites are unlikely to necessarily, bring out the jazz hands, so to speak. Therefore, in this particular, where it's a nuanced sort of scenario like this, it may be appropriate for, and again, it's not about determining the outcome, but purely identifying the opportunity for investigation. If it were to be amended to include those as investigation areas, is there an underlying concern around either statutory legal implications or a significant, I suppose, precedent that the department would be concerned about?
I think precedent might be an issue here. I mean, these are sizable areas, 60 hectares and 102 hectares. And also, if we were to be entertained, consideration needs to be given to how the local planning strategy reflects that position and whether it is the right instrument, because in Regulation 11, the local planning strategy has to deal with certain things, reflecting the long-term planning aspirations of the council, reflecting the state and regional planning policies, for example. So if it were to be entertained in this document, then I think there needs to be some clarity around what is it that this local planning strategy is going to be driving.
So effectively, your position is this is not the right vehicle and that this should be pursued through Perth and Peel frameworks.
That would be my position.
Thank you. Further questions on the strategy, members?
Just
Go ahead.
through the chair, just clarity on the precedent, which I always find interesting. I mean, there seems to be a lot of logic. I mean, for this, yourselves imply it as well, all the things you've said, which is really good. The local authority is supportive of it. The landowners are supportive of it. So it seems to me that there's a lot of logic, planning sense to actually bring it in. And I think therefore I question the precedent because everything is on a case-by-case basis and that's been tested. So because it's a case-by-case basis, if you ignore the idea of precedent, I totally understand where you're coming from and the challenge. Would it seem logical to bring them in so that they have more desirable, global, holistic control and review of the area? It seems to me that it's actually a better outcome, or could be a better outcome to include them in this instance, because you can be considered together. Otherwise, you're going to have all sorts of ad hoc things coming in outside this planning area.
I think, so in attachment 5, you will see that there are 2 other areas which are very similar situations. Landowners advocating for change, from rural residential and rural to allowing for some level of urban development. So, if there was the appetite to consider something for these 2 areas, I think perhaps equally those other areas, there might need to be similar consideration.
I was just holding on to a few comments. Thank you. I guess I just wanted to reaffirm, the position in terms of the assessment and the recommendation before SPC today. I think it is really important to think pragmatically, but within parameters that are in front of us. This is a local planning strategy. It deals with the local strategic planning, and one of the key considerations is consistency with the state planning framework. So to, support investigation area would be with that approach, and it certainly will lead to ad hoc proposals, perhaps not an equitable approach to these sorts of things. We're not saying that it's a straight out no, but we just don't think that this is the correct approach to pursue this.
Thank you.
Members, any further questions? Okay, should we move to consideration of the item? What's the recommendation before us? Moved by Commissioner Herron, seconded by Commissioner Brooks. Thank you. Any discussion?
I would just say that, pardon me, obviously the key issue here is about the inclusion of additional areas. And I think, like others, there is a rationality about these particular precincts. However, I think I've taken on board the feedback as to is this the right vehicle in order to bring about the change? That is that changing the colour on the plan in the local planning strategy won't actually change anything. In terms of the implementation which we are seeking, it needs to be undertaken through the metropolitan process first. The only notion I was thinking of is whether there is some level of reference made to the fact that these areas are going to be investigated. But I also take on board the point that if we do that, it needs to then be consistent and across the board in terms of other areas. And without the level of information on all of those precincts, that is a little bit problematic. On that basis, I felt it was appropriate to support the recommendation as it stands, and it being open to the Commission and also the SPC to ensure that those investigation areas are pursued through the appropriate venues. So it's on that basis that I've moved the position as it is.
Commissioner Brooks, any comments?
Yeah, just to agree with that, I think yes, there's some merit in these sites, but there's obviously some merit in some other sites as well. We don't have a great deal of information about all of those sites to be able to make those determinations at this point in time. And principally for me, the fact that they're in or out of this particular strategy doesn't prevent those landowners from pursuing actual changes of land use. They can still do that work. They can still make those proposals. So for me, that's why I leave it as it is and keep the framework in alignment.
Thank you. Members, any further comments on the strategy? Look, just on that, I think that Brett Ashby covered it off very well, actually, from the City of Rockingham, where he said that, I think in his words, he's supportive of the investigation, not 100% sold, but it does warrant investigation. He does want to see a strategic process undertaken, and I think that's then incumbent upon the WAPC to then take that forward. We are receiving approaches on numerous parcels of land across the metropolitan area. They are being documented, and I think that as we go through the Person Peel health check, that's the appropriate vehicle then to sort of talk about after that health check, where do we turn our mind to things like whether we consider further planning investigation areas. So I think that it's about capturing this and understanding it, and then having that strategic discussion at the WAPC. So yeah, I think that it's been really good to air this, and I think I'd say Brett at City of Rockingham has taken a very pragmatic view, and I've taken on board his comments about where to from here, and I think that's incumbent on the Commission then to hear that and take it forward in terms of how we approach that through the Person Peel frameworks. So happy to support the motion as recommended. Is there any further comments? Any dissent? Thank you very much. That is carried. Members, we are now moving to confidential session. So if I could please have a mover and seconder that we go to confidential session for the remaining items on the agenda. Moved by Member Harmon. You can still move this motion if you like. Moved by Commissioner Lakey. Any dissent? Thank you very much.